Hi everybody and welcome back to English language revision. So as promised, here's a video on a student exemplar for the English language paper 2 question. Before we actually go on to that student exemplar, I think it's essential that we look at the mark scheme. And what I've done is I've simply translated, as it were, the actual mark scheme into pupil speak. So 24 marks, as you already know, is for content and organization, whereas 16 marks is for spelling, punctuation, and grammar, the actual accuracy of your writing. So I'd like you to ask yourself this question. Are you actually thinking about your target reader when you're writing? Are you writing in the relevant tone? So, I need to write in an appropriate way for my target reader. I need to think about the tone I'm expected to write in. Are you expected to write in a serious or a humorous tone or a sad tone? You need to think about the tone of your writing because it needs, after all, to sound convincing. I need to ensure that the expected format has been used for my writing. So that means if it tells you to write a letter, don't go off writing a diary entry unless you want 0 marks. Please make sure you follow the writing format. So if it says a letter, it's a letter. If it's a news article, it's a news article. And no, you don't write columns. Okay, you simply write in paragraphs and you use a title because that's what news articles have, titles. Right, next question you need to ask yourself is, do you use advanced vocabulary? Are you incorporating, in our school we have words of the week. Maybe you've been learning some words of the week, I don't know. But if you haven't, just type into Google a list of 100 advanced words, and there's literally a list of 100 advanced words for you to learn. Right. Are you using language techniques such as Pirate Mouse or Trappers or A Forest? Start using the full range of those devices. You need to structure your writing in a sophisticated way, and this is where planning comes into play. If you've planned your work and you've planned your paragraphs very quickly, you'll have a good idea as to how you've structured your writing. Use a variety of punctuation marks for effect as well. Don't just use long paragraphs, use long, short paragraphs, use complex sentences, use simple sentences for real variety. Obviously, I've said this before, plan your writing. Do not spend too long on the plan though, because you've only got 45 minutes. Use discourse markers. What's that, miss? Well, things like furthermore, in addition, nevertheless, at the beginning of each paragraph, just to showcase to the examiner that you have logically thought about every single paragraph and how they're connected to each other. So if you're talking about something that's similar to a previous paragraph, you say similarly. However, if you're talking about something that's quite different, you say on the other hand. And this is another way of showing the examiner, yes, I've structured my work, I am paying attention to the task, and I have a clear plan of action. So that is for 24 marks. Let's look at the 16 marks. You need to use different sentence types. Now, if you don't know your simple from your compound and from your complex sentences, do not fret. Simply go onto Google, type in complex sentences worksheets, and you'll find so many free ones available. Print them off and complete them. It's all about the main clause and subordinate clause, and there's the rule about, using a comma at a certain place that you need to follow through. And of course, if you would like me to create a video on that, I would definitely do that. I don't mind. Right, next, use a full range of punctuation marks. Yes, it's boring reading sentences with full stops and an exclamation mark. That's about it. And it's really boring just seeing a question mark being used as an example of how varied you can be. No, 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 no. I need to see ellipses. I need to see brackets. I need to see all colons and semicolons, all of the possible punctuation marks used for. Do you see that dramatic dash there? Effect. Now, it's all about the art of speaking. Okay, you are an artist now. You need to hone in to people's emotions, and you do that through the way you use those punctuation marks. If you're just talking on and on and on with lots and lots of lists, people are going to fall asleep. Make sure that there's a variety of writing styles and paragraph lengths and sentence lengths and punctuation marks. Use formal English always, because for some reason some people think that, oh, it tells me to write for for children, or it tells me to write for students, so I can use slang in it, miss. No, 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 never. Instead, what you're supposed to do is simply show off to the examiner, I've got so much knowledge, I know my ambitious vocabulary, I know how to get the reader's attention, I know my personal pronouns, and you're not going to trick me, examiner, into writing some gibberish. I will be writing in a sophisticated and eloquent way, because the same mark scheme is going to be used regardless. Okay, so you better make sure your vocabulary is impressive. Okay, cool. So that is the mark scheme. Let's look at a student example. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it's a fantastic way to start, so that after you've looked at this student example, you can then yourself have a go at writing your own response to this question 5, paper 2 statement. So let's just remind ourselves of the statement. Students do not benefit from learning in environments where the entire focus is upon exams. If public exams were abolished tomorrow, students would improve and learning would flourish. Write a letter to your local MP in which you explain your point of view on this statement. So here's an example response. Dear local MP, so showing the examiner you're writing a letter, please use dear local MP, whoever you're writing to. I am writing this letter to explain. Well done, clever one. Excellent. You are telling the examiner you know exactly what writing style you are supposed to be following. So what's stopping you from saying, I am writing to explain, if it says explain. I am writing to persuade, if it says persuade. Nothing stops you. And yes, it's a bit explicit, but you're telling the examiner, I know exactly what writing style you've told me to write in. But please make sure that you write in an explanatory way. Remember those 2 questions? When you're writing to explain, you need to answer, number 1, how something is done. Number 2, why something should be done or should not be done. Okay? So in this instance, we need to explain how we feel about the whole idea of abolishing exams and exam-focused lessons, and why we should keep or abolish them. Okay? Right, let's continue. To you, how I feel about the idea that students don't benefit from learning environments where the focus is on exams. To be honest, I completely disagree with this statement. So, remember, you have to answer all parts of the question. If we look back at our question, the question does ask us here, write to your local MP in which you explain, yeah, we're doing that, we're explaining, your point of view. So if you don't tell me clearly what your point of view is, you're losing marks. So make sure you are telling me your point of view. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Okay. And that's what the student's doing at the very beginning, which is really good. They're clearly using the question, as I like to tell my students, as an answer. Use words from the question in your point sentences, in your sentences, okay? As I find that there is an alarming shortage in the number of teachers available to prepare us for our examinations. This, as a result, so you've got a complex sentence there, it makes it sound very sophisticated, is affecting my ability to revise for my up-and-coming exams in the first place, as my lessons are not exam-focused. Exam-focused lessons are a blessing. Look at that dramatic use of a colon there to place emphasis on the following words. Not a curse. And notice contrasting language, the juxtaposition between a blessing and a curse, and the metaphorical reference to exams as a blessing and not a curse. Again, you've got lots of pirate mouse techniques or trappers or aphorists. Use similes, metaphors, and so on to give your writing a real sense of sophistication. And we've got those connectives. Surely the whole point of going to school is to ensure that I leave the establishment with a standing ovation. You've got that colon again. A merry band of several grade 9s and brackets. Fantastic. This student is clearly trying to get band 9 in recognition of my exam-based lessons over the past few years. So that's a nice short introduction there. And we continue. If anything, I believe that we need to shape our lessons so that schools have more of an exam focus for every single lesson. Remember, you need to link back to the question all the time. Look at the student repeating exam focus because, remember the statement, entire focus is upon exams to be abolished. So you are telling the examiner, I am really investigating this statement. Every single lesson to ensure that we gain the highest marks. After all, we are competing against millions, so the student is trying to use statistics now, of other people's nationally. I would rather be well trained for my examinations. And then we've got the references to professionals and professional establishments, businesses, universities, and colleges all await breathlessly for our exam results. You've got the personification of these establishments as well, in order to decide if our grades are sufficient enough to gain entry into their institutions, and the advanced vocabulary there. Okay? Instead of just saying, oh, to let us go into the places, you've got institutions to describe those places. Now, and obviously, if you want to create a sense of urgency, use time connectives. Now, imagine we take away these exams. What on earth could we propose to replace this reliable measurement of academic integrity? So you've got the rhetorical question there, whilst using, okay, a complex sentence as well, because you've got the subordinate clause here. Remember subordinate clause, group of words that don't make sense on their own, in the middle. And yes, by the way, you can use commas, 2 commas, like brackets, if you didn't know that before. Please practice that. Abolishment of examinations is not the answer. So after that really long sentence, notice this student is now adding that short dramatic sentence. Pow, wake up, notice the change. It would cause. So when you explain, you say how something should be done and why it should be done, and why it should not be done if you disagree with it. So this student is explaining why abolishment of the exams should not be done, because it would cause chaos across the country, not to mention the fact that internationally we will be condemned as a mockery. If exams were to be abolished, so it continues to explain, students would have nothing to aspire to, nothing to improve, and nothing to reflect on. You've got that list of 3 and the repetitive use of that first word, really creating the sense of rhetoric in that sentence. Learning would be stifled into a subjective venture for every individual to demand that their standard of skills are of the highest quality. As a result, future generations will become damaged. And then you've got that colon emphasizing the next few words, losing the words of Shakespeare, the trigonometry of Hipparchus, the logical study of science. A whimsical decision, if you ask me. Again, if you don't know some of these words, magpie these words, as I say to my students. Steal these words if you like them, and learn what they mean, and then use them in your own essays if they are relevant. Therefore, I implore you to disregard the idea that exam-focused lessons are damaging. I recognize, so notice the tone here has changed slightly. It's repeating those personal pronouns, you, and it's got a real direct address because we're coming towards the end of the student essay. And making sure that you've got your reader's attention is essential. But there's another way you can always get your reader's attention, and that's to think about your reader and what they care about the most, and try and connect with that in any way possible. So we have a local MP. What do they care about the most? Try and link to that. So we know that local MPs, where do they normally go to work? Where do they normally have their debates and discussions? Obviously, the Houses of Parliament. So why not link that here? And this is what the student has done. And they're also using an anecdote, a short story, to prove a point. Imagine, sir, if you will, I storm into the Houses of Parliament and demand that your debates and discussions are not to be focused on the laws of the United Kingdom anymore.